Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today's topic is something I think we all struggle with at some point, figuring out if someone is really right for us, like long term.
Yeah,
Like not just a first date, like
right.
for real,
The whole long haul.
Exactly. And you sent over some excerpts from this book, Second Marriages, Why 40% Succeed and 60% Don't.
Yeah.
And honestly, this chapter just like hit me hard.
Yeah.
Even though it's focused on second marriages, I think the stuff about character, it applies to like any relationship,
Hmm.
romantic or even just friendships, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely. It really gets to the core of how we choose who we let into our lives.
Exactly. And there's this quote from the book that kind of sets the stage.
Uh,
It's Henry David Thoreau, and he says, "You cannot dream yourself into character. You must hammer and forge yourself one."
wow. Yeah.
So it's just this reminder that good character isn't something you're just like born with, right?
Right.
It's built over time.
Yeah, and it takes active effort,
Yeah.
which makes me think about all those times we've been drawn to someone, based on those superficial things like looks or charm, only to realize later that there wasn't much substance beneath the surface.
Ugh. Been there
Right.
so many times. And that's where the book's definition of character really comes in.
Right.
Because it's not just about being a good person in kind of a general sense. It's about those deeper values
Yeah.
that show up in how someone treats others,
Right.
handles responsibility,
Yeah.
faces challenges. Like, it's the bedrock of who they are.
Yeah, exactly. It's the who beneath the what.
Yes.
And the book argues that this who is ultimately what determines a relationship's success,
Okay.
not the initial spark or those surface level qualities.
I like that. So then how do we actually spot those deeper character traits?
Yeah.
Especially early on when everyone is putting their best foot forward, first few dates, everyone's on good behavior.
Right. That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Right. Because we can all put on a show for a while, but the book argues that one of the best ways to see someone's true colors is to observe how they act under pressure. Because when things get tough, their true self comes out.
Interesting.
They're reacting based on those deeply ingrained values,
Uh-huh.
not just a carefully crafted persona.
So it's like those moments where you see someone's mask slip a little?
Exactly.
Hmm.
The book actually tells this funny story about the author's cousin
Okay.
who went on a date with someone who seemed super sweet and charming
Okay.
on the phone.
Yeah.
But when they met in person, the first thing she did was order a large beer,
Oh, no.
even though she'd come across as, super refined on the phone.
Ow.
And then she was rude to the waiter.
Oh, my God.
Total mismatch.
What a first impression fail.
Right.
So paying attention to how someone acts under pressure is key.
Yes.
What are some other ways that we can kind of get a sense of their true character?
Well, the book emphasizes that observing someone around their close friends or when they think they're alone can be super revealing.
Because their guard is down.
Exactly. They're less likely to be putting on a show.
Mm-hmm.
And the book also talks about noticing any inconsistencies between someone's words and actions. Do they say one thing but do another? That can be a red flag that their character isn't as solid as it seems.
So it's about being a little bit of a detective, looking for those clues. And speaking of detective work, the book introduces this really cool technique called the G.S.T method.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Yes. The G.S.T, which stands for Get Close Without Physical Intimacy, Sample Opinions from Trusted Friends and Family, and Take a Straight Path or Make a U-Turn.
Okay.
It's basically a 3-step process for evaluating a potential partner's character.
Okay, so break that down. Get close, but without the romance. That seems counterintuitive
Right.
when you're initially attracted to someone.
But think about it this way. Physical intimacy can create a bond
Mm-hmm.
that kind of masks flaws and clouds your judgment.
Yeah.
You might be so caught up in the physical attraction that you overlook those deeper incompatibilities.
It's like that fog of infatuation everyone talks about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of rushing into physical intimacy, the get close step focuses on having meaningful conversations,
Okay.
really digging deep, to someone's values,
Mm.
beliefs, goals, their dreams for the future,
Yeah.
asking those questions that reveal who they are at their core.
Okay. I like it. And then step 2 is sample opinions. It takes a village, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
Getting perspectives from your trusted friends and family
Yeah.
can be incredibly valuable
Mm-hmm.
because they often see things you might miss,
Okay.
especially when you're closer to the situation.
Makes sense.
Plus, they care about you and want what's best for you.
But it's not about letting them make the decision for you.
Right. Ultimately, you're the one who has to make the final call.
Yeah.
But their insights can help you see things from different angles and make a more informed choice.
Okay.
Which brings us to the final step. take a straight path, or make a U-turn.
So this is decision time.
Exactly. After gathering all this information and really getting to know someone,
Yeah.
you have to ask yourself, do I feel good about what I've discovered?
Mm-hmm.
Do I see this person as someone I could build a life with flaws and all?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then proceed with caution, but proceed.
Right.
But if you're seeing more red flags than green lights,
Get out of there.
exactly. And that brings us to the book's 5 major character flaws,
Okay.
or red flags,
Okay, hit me.
that are crucial to watch out for.
What should we be looking out for?
They can be really detrimental to any relationship, no matter how strong the initial attraction might be.
Okay.
So the first one is laziness. And this isn't just about someone who, you know, enjoys chilling out or relaxing.
Mm.
It's about a lack of work ethic
Yeah.
and unwillingness to contribute their fair share.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely had roommates like that.
Right.
Talk about resentment building up.
The book compares laziness in a partner to signing on to poverty in your home.
Wow.
You know, if one person isn't pulling their weight, it creates a strain on the whole system.
That's a powerful analogy. Yeah. And this applies to all areas of life too, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just chores, but also, emotional labor,
Mhm.
supporting each other's dreams.
Absolutely. It's about shared responsibility
Yeah.
and a willingness to show up for each other.
Yeah.
Not just in the fun times,
Right.
but also when things get tough.
Okay. So laziness, red flag number 1. What's next on the list?
Right. Red flag number 2 is selfishness.
Ooh.
That me, myself, and I mentality,
Uh-huh.
where someone consistently prioritizes their own needs and desires
Okay.
above their partner's.
So the opposite of teamwork.
Exactly. It creates that parasitic dynamic where one person is always taken without giving back.
Mm-hmm.
The book really stresses that relationships should be about mutual benefit,
Right.
a two-way street where both partners are giving and receiving.
It's about finding that balance, that reciprocity. Okay. Selfishness, check. What's red flag number 3?
Red flag number 3 is pride.
Ooh.
It's that subtle but destructive force of having an exaggerated sense of self-importance.
Mm.
You know, believing you're better than others
Yeah.
and often looking down on them.
Have you ever noticed that people with a lot of pride have a really hard time admitting when they're wrong?
So they can't handle being wrong.
Yeah.
And that makes it almost impossible to grow and learn both individually and as a couple.
Right.
The book gives an example of a husband who constantly shuts down his wife's opinions,
Oh.
never letting her contribute to decisions or even correct him when he's wrong.
Oof, that sounds so frustrating
Right.
to be in a relationship like that.
Yeah.
So pride, definitely something to watch out for. What's next on this list of relationship red flags?
And it can be incredibly draining,
Hmm.
for the other person in the relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've got laziness, we've got selfishness, we've got pride.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next one?
Give me the next red flag. I'm ready.
All right, red flag number 4 is ingratitude.
Okay.
That lack of appreciation,
Yeah.
for the good things in your life.
Okay.
And especially in your relationship.
It's funny because I think a lot of people assume ingratitude is just about forgetting to say thank you,
Right.
but it's way deeper than that, right?
Absolutely right.
It's a whole attitude.
It's about failing to recognize and value the things that your partner does,
Mm.
whether it's a grand gesture or just those small everyday acts of love and support.
And I bet that can really wear down a relationship over time. Like if you constantly feel like your efforts aren't appreciated, you probably start to put in less effort.
Exactly.
Right.
The book actually quotes Dr. David Oyedepo,
Mm-hmm.
who says, ingratitude is only a bait for misfortune.
Hmm.
So if you want a happy relationship, cultivate gratitude.
Yeah.
Express it often and mean it.
I love that gratitude as a shield against misfortune.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got laziness, selfishness, pride, and ingratitude. Those are some pretty heavy hitters. What's the final red flag on this list?
This one's probably the most damaging of all lies and insincerity.
Oof. That's a tough one because dishonesty really erodes trust. And trust is like the foundation of any healthy relationship.
You nailed it. The book really emphasizes that once that trust is broken, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild.
Yeah.
It's like that, crack in the foundation of a house.
Uh-huh.
It just weakens the entire structure.
So what are some signs that someone might be struggling with dishonesty or insincerity?
Okay.
What should we be looking for?
Pay attention to inconsistencies
Okay.
between what they say and what they do.
Uh-huh.
Do their actions match their words? Are they reliable? Do they keep their promises? Do they follow through on their commitments?
Okay.
These are all indicators of their level of sincerity.
So we've got laziness, selfishness, Pride, ingratitude, and lies, and insincerity.
Yeah.
That's quite a lineup of red flags. It feels kind of heavy, though. I mean, nobody's perfect.
That's an important point.
Right.
And the book acknowledges this too. The goal isn't to find a flawless partner because those
But
people don't exist.
it's more about finding someone whose flaws you can live with, right?
Exactly.
Maybe even help them work through.
It's about understanding that character flaws are a part of being human.
Yeah.
And it's about choosing a partner who's willing to work on themselves, to grow and evolve, someone who inspires you to do the same.
That's a great point because relationships should be about mutual growth,
Yeah,
supporting each other on those journeys of becoming the best versions of ourselves.
absolutely. It's a partnership, a team effort.
Yes.
And speaking of team effort, the book talks about how character flaws can really impact the dynamics of a relationship.
Okay.
Like one flaw can trigger a chain reaction.
Oh, I can see that, like a domino effect.
Exactly.
So how does that play out with some of these red flags?
Well, take laziness, for example.
Okay.
If one partner is consistently lazy, it can create a ton of resentment
Yeah.
and frustration in the other partner, leading to arguments, emotional distance, and a breakdown of communication.
It's like one person is carrying the weight of the whole relationship,
Right.
which
Yeah.
sounds exhausting.
And then there's selfishness that can create a power struggle, where one partner constantly feels like their needs aren't being met.
So it becomes all about one person's wants and desires, and the other person just feels neglected
Exactly.
and unimportant.
And then you have pride. Pride can make it super difficult to resolve conflicts
Yeah.
because a proud person often struggles to admit when they're wrong.
Uh-huh.
They're not very good at apologizing
Right.
or taking responsibility.
Which can really damage trust and intimacy
Yes.
in a relationship. Okay, so we've seen how laziness, selfishness, and pride can play out in a relationship. What about ingratitude?
Well, ingratitude can make a partner feel like all their efforts are taken for granted,
Yeah.
which can lead to, a decrease in motivation and a feeling of being unappreciated.
Like their contributions are invisible.
It is.
That's got to be a horrible feeling.
And then, of course, there's lies and insincerity.
Yeah.
This one's probably the most destructive
Uh-huh.
because it directly attacks the foundation of trust,
Right.
which is essential for, a strong and healthy relationship.
Because how can you build a solid relationship without trust?
Exactly.
It's possible.
Once trust is broken, it's like a poison
Yeah.
that spreads throughout the entire relationship,
Yeah.
creating suspicion, doubt, insecurity.
So it's clear that all these character flaws, they're not just individual issues, they have a ripple effect on the whole relationship. So what can we do with this information? How can we use it to create healthier and happier relationships?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is that we need to be aware of these red flags,
Okay.
both in ourselves and in our partners.
So it's about self-awareness
Yes.
and being honest with ourselves about our own shortcomings, right? Like maybe we need to look in the mirror and acknowledge that we've been a little lazy or selfish in our relationships.
That's a powerful insight.
Yeah.
And it's also about being observant,
Yep.
in our relationships, paying attention to those red flags and addressing them early on. Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to fix those issues.
It's like anything else. The sooner you address a problem, the better. But it's not about judging or condemning someone for their flaws.
Right. Right.
It's about recognizing that we all have them
We do.
and choosing to approach those flaws with compassion and understanding and a willingness to work together to overcome them.
So it's a two-way street. It takes effort from both sides to build a strong and healthy relationship. The book also talks about the importance of choosing a partner whose flaws you can accommodate.
That's so crucial
Yeah.
because no matter how much you love someone,
Yeah.
if their flaws are constantly causing you pain or making you unhappy,
Right.
it's going to be a constant uphill battle.
And it's not about settling.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that no one's perfect and finding someone whose imperfections complement your own. Someone whose flaws you can accept and even appreciate.
Because sometimes those imperfections are what make them unique and lovable.
Exactly. And it's about choosing to focus on the positive aspects of their character.
Yeah. The things that drew you to them in the first place.
Right.
Everyone has strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it's about finding someone whose strengths outweigh their weaknesses.
It's about finding someone who's perfect for you, even if they're not perfect in every way.
Beautifully said. And, at this point, I'd love to get your thoughts on something. The book leaves us with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Beyond the 5 flaws we've discussed, What are some other character traits
Mm-hmm.
that you consider essential
Okay.
or deal breakers in a relationship?
Ooh, that's a great question. Let me think for a second. I think for me, one of the most important traits is kindness.
Kindness. Tell me more about why that's so important to you.
Well, I think kindness is the foundation of empathy, compassion, and respect.
Mm.
It's about treating others, especially your partner, with consideration, understanding, and genuine care.
That resonates with me. Kindness creates a safe and nurturing space in a relationship.
Exactly. And I think it's essential for navigating conflicts, disagreements, and even just the everyday ups and downs of life.
Because even when you're disagreeing, you can still be kind to each other.
Right.
It's about approaching those disagreements with respect and a desire to understand each other's perspectives.
Right. And, along those lines, I think another essential trait is a sense of humor.
A sense of humor. Why is that important to you?
Well, I think laughter is such a powerful antidote to stress and tension
Mm.
and even sadness.
Yeah.
Being able to laugh together, to find humor in those everyday moments, it creates a sense of lightness and connection.
It's about not taking yourself too seriously,
Right.
even when things get tough.
Exactly. And on the flip side, I think a deal breaker for me would be controlling behavior.
Controlling behavior,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
Yeah.
What makes that a deal breaker for you?
Well, controlling partner often tries to limit their partner's freedom
Uh-huh.
and independence and even their sense of self.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly suffocating.
And it's often rooted in insecurity and a lack of trust.
Exactly. And for me, another deal breaker would be a lack of respect.
Lack of respect in what ways?
I think respect encompasses so much respect for your partner's opinions, their feelings, their dreams, their values.
Mm.
It's about treating them as an equal whale,
Mm-hmm.
valuing their contributions and honoring their individuality.
And when respect is absent, it creates an imbalance of power in the relationship.
It does, and it can lead to feelings of hurt, resentment, and even worthlessness.
So you're looking for a partner who's kind, has a sense of humor, and treats you with respect.
Yes.
Those are non-negotiables for you.
They are, and controlling behavior and a lack of respect are absolute deal breakers because I think a healthy relationship should be built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and support.
I couldn't agree more, and it's so refreshing to hear you articulate your values so clearly.
Well, thank you. It's been a really insightful exercise.
It has, and I think it's something we should all do.
Yeah.
Take the time to reflect on our own non-negotiables in relationships.
Mhm.
What are those core values that are essential for us to feel loved, respected, and supported?
Because knowing what we value and what we won't tolerate is essential for making healthy choices. It's about setting standards for ourselves and our relationships.
And ultimately, it's about creating a life and a love that aligns with our deepest values.
Beautifully said.
You know, this conversation has really made me think about the role of self-awareness in building strong relationships.
Yeah.
It's not just about spotting red flags in others. It's about recognizing our own flaws and being willing to work on them.
That's such a powerful point because we can't expect our partners to be perfect if we're not willing to do the work ourselves. We have to hold ourselves to the same standards we hold others to.
Exactly, and that's where the quote we started with comes back into play. You cannot dream yourself into character. You must hammer and forge yourself one.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that building good character is an ongoing process,
it is.
a conscious choice we make every day.
And it's a journey we embark on both individually and together in our relationships.
Beautifully said, and this whole conversation has given me so much to think about.
Me too.
What's resonating with you the most? What are you taking away from this deep dive?
I think what's resonating with me the most is the idea that character truly is the foundation of a lasting relationship.
It's the bedrock.
It is, because without those core values of kindness, respect, integrity, and a willingness to grow,
Yeah.
even the most passionate love can crumble.
It's not about finding someone who checks all the boxes on your list.
Right.
It's about finding someone who shares your values, someone who inspires you to be your best self,
Yes.
and someone whose flaws you can embrace as part of the beautiful tapestry of your relationship.
I love that.
And this conversation has really highlighted the importance of choosing wisely,
It has.
because we have the power to choose who we let into our lives and our hearts.
And that choice has the potential to shape our happiness and fulfillment for years to come.
It's not a decision to be taken lightly.
Absolutely. And you know what? This deep dive has really made me appreciate the complexities of relationships.
They're certainly not simple.
They're not, but they're also incredibly rewarding when we approach them with intentionality, awareness, and a willingness to do the work.
I couldn't agree more.
Hmm.
As we wrap up this conversation,
Hmm.
I'm left with a sense of hope.
Hope. Tell me more.
I think even though we've been talking about flaws and red flags,
Yeah.
it's ultimately a message of empowerment
Empowerment. How so?
because we have the power to choose our partners, to set boundaries, to communicate our needs, and to walk away from relationships that don't serve us.
Mm.
We're not just passive participants in our own love
We're
lives.
active creators of our own love stories.
Exactly. And I think that's a beautiful and empowering message to leave our listeners with.
On that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive, but before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked about the importance of character in choosing a partner, but what about our own character? What steps can we take to become the kind of partner we want to attract?
Yeah.
What flaws can we work on to create a more fulfilling and loving relationship? I encourage you to reflect on those questions and to embrace the journey of becoming the best version of yourself.
That's a wonderful challenge to leave our listeners with. And as always, thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into, character and relationships,
Yeah.
what's really sticking with me is that it's not about finding a perfect partner.
Right.
That perfect person just doesn't exist.
It's so true. And I think holding on to that fantasy can actually prevent us from finding real lasting love.
Exactly. It's more about finding someone whose imperfections you can accept,
Mhm.
maybe even appreciate, because those imperfections are part of what makes them unique.
And someone who inspires you to work on your own imperfections.
Mhm.
Because relationships should be about growth for both people.
Totally. It's a partnership. It's a team effort. And speaking of teamwork, the book emphasizes that working on character flaws should never be about one person trying to force the other to change.
That never works.
Right.
It has to be a mutual decision,
Uh-huh.
a shared commitment.
Right. Both partners have to be willing to acknowledge their flaws and put in the effort to grow, and that requires a lot of trust and vulnerability.
Absolutely. It's about creating that safe and supportive space where both partners feel comfortable opening up and working on themselves together.
So good communication, honesty, and a shared commitment to growth. That's the recipe.
Yeah.
And, the book also points out that sometimes we need a little extra help along the way.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need those outside perspectives to help us see things more clearly,
Right.
whether it's therapy, counseling, or even just wise friends and family members.
Yeah, their support can make a huge difference. And I think it's also important to remember that, working on character flaws is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time fix.
So much patience. It's about continuous self-reflection,
Mm-hmm.
learning, and growth,
Mm.
both individually and as a couple. And it's about being kind to ourselves throughout the process.
Because change takes time
Yeah.
and effort, but I have a feeling that the payoff is worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When we commit to becoming the best versions of ourselves, our relationships transform too.
Okay.
They become stronger, more fulfilling, more resilient.
And that's ultimately what we all want, right?
Yeah.
To create those relationships that are built on love, respect, and shared values.
Beautifully said. This deep dive has really filled me with a sense of hope.
Hope, tell me more.
Even though we've been talking about flaws and challenges,
Mm-hmm.
there's also this optimism that comes from knowing we have the power to change,
Yeah.
to grow, and to create the kind of relationships we truly desire.
Yeah.
It's empowering.
It reminds me of another quote from the book.
Right.
The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude.
Mm.
It's so simple yet so profound.
We're not stuck with our flaws. We can choose to work on them, evolve, and create a brighter future for ourselves and our relationships.
So true. And even though relationships can be challenging, they can also be incredibly rewarding when we approach them with intentionality, awareness, and a willingness to do the work.
I couldn't agree more.
That's a really hopeful message.
It is, and on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of character and relationships.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey of exploration and discovery. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep diving deep.
And keep believing in the power of love growth and the possibility of creating truly fulfilling relationships